Hey, my name's James Nicholson and welcome to this YouTube channel. Welcome to this video where we're going to dissect, should you be buying the property you live in or should you be renting the property you live in if you want to be a property investor and make money in property. Now, before we jump into that, and you want to stick around because you might be surprised with the answer because I know you've been told something very different from somebody else. Now, before we jump into that, I want you guys to do me a favor and do yourself a favor. Now, we're investing in property at the moment. We're building our portfolio and I've been doing that for a number of years, but I've started documenting it now, right? And so, but more importantly, and making it more interesting, I'm currently building a portfolio for my two daughters. I've just bought a property with my daughter, Georgia, who's 21. We just bought our first auction property. We're renovating that. And all the videos are on this channel of the purchase and then renovation. So do go and check those out. And we're also building a portfolio for my new baby, Amelie, who's just one. So how can you follow us on the journey and join us is to subscribe. So smash that subscribe button and hit the bell notification. Do it now. It'll take you 2 seconds and then we'll jump into the content. Come on, go and do that now. Smash that button right there. Now, renting versus buying. Now, who's read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? You've probably heard of it, right? It's a very, very popular book. Probably the biggest investing book in the world. And so in the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, Robert Kiyosaki talks about assets that pay you and assets that take money out of your pocket. Now, the common belief is that a house that you live in is an asset, right? Because it goes up in value. But Robert Kiyosaki's argument on that is that it's a liability because it takes money out of your pocket. It doesn't actually pay you rent, does it? Right? So you don't physically get money into your pocket by living in the house that you own. And so because of that, it's seen as a liability because you've got to pay for the maintenance, you've got to pay for the council tax, you've got to pay for all of the work that needs to be done, mortgage, and all of that kind of stuff. And so it's seen as a liability. And so the reasoning behind that is that as it's taking money out, you shouldn't do that. And you should rent a property where you live because you might pay more per month, but then all the maintenance is somebody else's problems. And the money that you would have had to pay for a deposit, which is going to be a chunky sum of money, that money can be used to buy other assets, other income producing assets. Now, that makes sense, right? It totally makes sense. And I know some very successful millionaires that follow that principle, but not me. Now, for me, I found that it was better to own a property. You see, I really wanted to own a property very, very young. And I'm a business coach as well. And in my book, Expert Mastery, I talk about my upbringing, which was not the easiest, but it wasn't the worst either. But it was an interesting upbringing. And my mum was an alcoholic. And we didn't have money, right? We didn't have money. And I saw that it was stressful. And I could see that I didn't want that life. And I wanted to make some money for myself. And so what I noticed was that owning a house was a great way to make money. And so I purchased my first property when I was just 18 years old. I bought a studio flat in Dorking in Surrey for £45,000. Now, that in Robert Kiyosaki's model would be seen as a liability because he's right. I did have to pay for the mortgage, I had to pay for the renovation, I had to pay to turn it into a one-bedroom property, and all of the work that I did cost me money, right? Whereas if I just rented, I wouldn't have had to put a deposit down. But here's the thing, right? That property, the deposit was only 10% rather than a buy-to-let where it's 25%. And so we put a deposit down, it was less than £3,000, right? It was a small sum of money, which I didn't have at the time. My grandfather funded that for me, right? Now, here's where I disagree with Robert Kiyosaki, because that property today is worth 250K, right? 250K. And so that means it's gone up 5 times in value. I bought in 1999, right? They say property doubles in price every 10 years. This one hasn't. This one's gone up more than that, right? Because if it had, it would have been worth in 2009, like 100. And then now, well, in like 2019, it would have been worth nearly 200, but this is worth 250. So it's more than doubled every 10 years. Now, here's why I believe that it's better to own it, because this property went up in value and then I was able to release equity, right? So what I did was I released equity when it got to £100,000 valuation, and I used that to buy my first official proper buy-to-let property down in Hastings, right? And so then I had a flat in Hastings and a flat in Dorking. Both of those went up in value. And around 5 years later, I then released equity from both of those, and then I bought a house, right? And so by doing that, I wouldn't have been able to get that first buy-to-let deposit because I was only working as a Burger King manager back then. I wouldn't have been able to do that. But by owning where I lived, there was a significant rise in interest in the value of the house, and that allowed me to do that. Now, I've done that multiple times, and that's allowed me to build a portfolio of properties using just this one property. Now what I'm doing is I'm releasing equity from all of my portfolio, which is what you're going to see on this journey, what I'm doing in the next year or so. And that's why we've made this YouTube channel, to hold me accountable, to teach you guys some stuff as well, right? And so now we're releasing equity from all of our properties, and that equity release is what we're using to buy other income producing assets. And that is why I believe that you should own. Now, my personal circumstances at the moment, I live with my partner, Katie, and she owns her property. We live there together, and she owns her property. Now, the problem is that she has at the moment is that we can't release equity. So this could be very interesting for some of you, right? Because it's her property, not mine. So she can't reduce equity because we've just had a baby and she's got a small business, right? So the income that she has from that is just a part-time income because she wanted to keep herself busy and occupied, right? And now that income isn't enough to be able to release equity, because if it's a personal property, at that stage, they look at it and they say, you know what, you can only release equity if you're on a certain salary, right? They don't want you to over leverage and not be able to pay back the mortgage. Makes sense. So if you live in a property like we do, and you want to get out equity, which in this instance is like many hundreds of thousands of pounds, many hundreds of thousands of pounds here, then what you could look at is then moving into another property and renting. Right, so this is a little secret here, because I've seen this and I wanted to cover this because I'm seeing on the channel people are saying, hey, look, I've got a lot of equity in the house, but I don't earn enough to release it. So this is how you can do it. You can move into a rental property, then get someone to rent your original house that you own. Now it can go on to a buy-to-let mortgage, right? Now it can go on to a buy-to-let mortgage. So if you had a house and it was worth £200,000, I don't know, maybe you've got all of that, maybe you've got a 50 grand mortgage, right? Because you bought it a while ago, right? And it's gone up in value. So now you've got 150 grand in equity. Now, when you move a tenant in there, now it can go onto a buy-to-let mortgage, which is really important, right? So what they will lend you is 75% of the value of this, the 200. So you can borrow 150. Now, you'll pay back this 50 grand mortgage and you'll have a 150 grand mortgage here. And so once you pay back that, you'll have 100 grand spare. And that 100 grand is your deposit for your next asset purchase, right? And you shouldn't be going and buying cars with this. You can do what you want with it, but it's not going to make you much money. You should be buying income producing assets, ideally more properties. And so this is what really smart people are doing, and we're looking at this at the moment, and we're trying to find somewhere where we want to, and that's another income stream. And so then I'll be building a portfolio with Katie, or helping her build her own portfolio as well. And so then we'll all have separate portfolios, all of us, and that's important that you do that and take yourself forward. So I hope that got you thinking, guys, and I hope you really are getting to grasps on this, on renting versus buying. I think that you should buy if you can, because you'll get the capital appreciation, which in the future will really, really help you. And so I don't agree with the renting. But as I said, there is the option of renting if your salary is low and then you need to release the equity that you've built up over these years. But you've got to buy in the first place to be able to do that. So I hope you found that useful. It's a little different spin. I've not seen a video like this before on YouTube, so hopefully that's useful to some of you guys. Give me a quick like, guys. Comment below and join us in the Property Accelerator Facebook group, guys. I've got a link in the description below. You can join us in that group and just get to know us. Hang out and find out all about investing in property and ask people questions and get some answers. I'm James Nicholson. Go and check out this video here and I'll see you guys very soon. Bye for now.